All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us this evening. We came here, with the sole goal in mind of supporting you guys and making sure we get your questions answered, your needs met, and make sure you leave here tonight feeling like you're going into a successful project, getting off to the right start with your goals in mind and with a roadmap of how to get there. So that's what we want to help you with tonight, is trying to make sure you have that roadmap, feel comfortable moving forward with your projects, and get you in the right spot so that you end up with a, hopefully grand champion. But whatever your goal might be, maybe your goal is just to go up a place or two in class, win your class at fair, whatever it might be, we want to get you there. And so with that being said, I've prepared a few steps and things we're going to talk through of how to get you there. But I also want to make sure we know that this is going to be very conversational, and I want you guys to get your questions answered. And I don't know what those questions might be until you voice those to me. So I hope that the content I prepared is relevant to you and you can find bits and pieces to take. But I also want to make sure we get your specific questions answered. There's a lot of different situations that we can get into with these show animals. So with that being said, if you have one that you've got a funny situation you never faced before, whether that be a finicky eater or a challenge with weight gain, anything like that, let me know and we'll put a game plan together to make you successful, okay? So yeah, super conversational, keep it low key. Don't be afraid to yell out at me, hey Mari, I've got a question, or hey lady, anything. Just stop me in my tracks and we'll get your question answered, okay? Is everything going okay online? We good there to move on? We're good online? They can hear me, everything? Okay, perfect. You guys online too, if you've got questions, feel free to type them into the chat and we'll be sure to get those answered for you. So what I prepared for you guys tonight is something I like to call basics get the banners, okay? I put together 10 really simple steps that often get overlooked as I work with kids all across the country on their 4-H projects. These are some of the most common mistakes I see made in those projects and the most easy ones to fix. So if that tells you anything, it should be that these are game-changing steps. They may sound very simple as we talk through them, but you'd be surprised at the difference that they can make. And they're all relevant to multiple species, but let me do a little survey here so I know who I'm talking to. Who was showing pigs this year? All of you, awesome, good pig group. Okay, how about cattle? Any calves on feed? Okay, sheep? Couple sheep? Okay, goats? Okay, awesome. Well, like I said, these will be relevant to all species, but good to know that we've got mostly a pig group in front of us here live. Those of you online, if you've got something specific you want to talk about, let me know. But I'll be sure to kind of hone in on the pig group here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Roll through the first point, which, like I said, these may sound super simple, but you would be surprised at what a difference this can make in your project. This is the cheapest and yet most crucial element to your product's nutrition program, and that's water. I say cheapest because we all have the beautiful luxury of going to a faucet and turning on water, right? We don't have to, we have access to it. We're so lucky for that, but we need to utilize it correctly for our livestock, with that being said. And what I mean by that is the few things you see up there: needs to be available, needs to be fresh, and it needs to be clean at all times. Now that sounds really simple, right? You might be thinking, okay, this is elementary level. Why would Mari even bring this up or think that it's important? But you would be surprised at how many times I get calls about livestock going off of feed and asking a few questions, digging into their project. I find that water is the source that animal has gone off of feed. A lot of times it's because that water is sitting and baking in the sun all day, so that animal doesn't want to drink, 90-degree water when it's also 105 degrees outside. That's like us drinking a warm tea on a really hot day. It's not refreshing. It doesn't cool you down. That's the last thing we want to drink. So we want to be able to provide fresh, which means it would be a little bit cooler temperature, and clean water so that they want to drink it, because water equates to everything performance-wise. When we talk about pigs, especially, we talk about weight gain a lot, right? Weight gain doesn't happen without water intake, because water intake is relying on digestibility. It enhances their immune system. It builds muscle, right? Muscle is made up of 80% of water. And in humans, our gut is developed, or our immune system is 70% reliant on water too. So that could be put into livestock terms and give you a better idea of how crucial the immune system is on water to keep these animals healthy and keep them, their immune system working so that we don't get them sick and going off feed that way, right? So make it available. What's the location of the water? Do they have to walk a long distance to get there? That's mostly for sheep and goats or cattle. You know, pigs we typically have in smaller pens, but we want to make sure it's available and easily accessed to them. We want to make sure they're not having to maybe go through a mud pit to get to their water source. I've seen, it sounds silly because we think pigs love mud, right? But I've seen a lot of injury come from mud pits too. It's hard and stressful on those feet and legs if they have to kind of tromp through that every single day to get to their water source. So we want to make sure it's in a nice dry spot, easily accessible to them, where they don't have to work too hard to get it. Making it fresh, okay? That, like I said, keeping it fresh usually means it's going to be at a cooler temperature when it's not sitting outside in the sun all day, baking like that. So if you have a big water trough, like when I was showing pigs and I was your age, 8 or 9, my dad had built me one of those big 250-gallon type jugs and just put a nipple into it, and that was our pig water. And we used to fill that thing up all the way, and I wouldn't have to fill it for 2 more weeks with 2 pigs on hand. But you know what that did in the summer is that made that water really, really hot because it would sit there for those 2 weeks. It would get really, really just not moldy, stale is the word I'm looking for. If you can imagine a cup of water sitting out for 2 weeks and then you have to be forced to go drink that on a hot day, it doesn't sound very good, does it? So what I encourage you to do, even if you have one of those big barrels, I'm not going to tell you to go buy a whole new watering system. I'm just going to tell you to fill it smaller amounts more often, okay? Fill that barrel just a quarter of the way so that in 2 days, you're going to go refill that and freshen that water up, get it recirculating. The other thing to keep in mind is your hose laying out all day, baking in the sun too, because that's going to heat the water up as it passes through. So maybe run a little water through that hose, make sure it feels cool to the touch before you fill that water back up, and just do smaller amounts more often, okay? And then keeping it clean. I know when I was your age, I also did not clean my water as often as I should. I let it sit there probably for the duration of my project, if I'm being honest with myself. And I can only imagine the grime and the mold that started growing in that thing and then forcing my pigs to drink that. So be cognizant of that, you know, take it out, pour the water out, dump that water out and rinse it, scrub it, clean it every couple weeks, at least I would say, and keep that water clean for them. If you wouldn't drink out of that water trough or tank, bucket, whatever it might be, don't force your animals to as well, okay? So water, like I said, the cheapest, yet the most crucial nutrient, okay, to your project, regardless of species. Number 2, another easy one, sounds easy, but is one that I see lacking in a lot of kids' show projects and programs, is building a routine. So parents, I can relate this to you a little bit. I don't know about you, but my kid, and she's not as old as your kids, but my kid thrives on routine. She's going to be 1 here pretty quick. And she does better when we have a schedule. When her schedule's thrown off, we get tantrums, we get crying, we get bad behavior. And I don't know about your kids, but typically they're probably waking up, having breakfast, catching the bus, or going to school. They have routine at school, right? Certain subjects at certain times, going from class to class. And then typically after school activities, whether that's sports or boys and girls clubs, whatever that might be, and then home, typically homework, dinner, maybe some TV and socializing, and then bedtime again, right? So routine and schedules, a lot of us as humans, we thrive on that, and livestock do as well. So having a routine for your livestock is very important to get them used to you, get them used to their schedule, and it helps train them. So we're training them to eat, we're training them to be around you, get used to people and their environment. If they have a routine, they're likely going to trust you a little bit more because they're used to seeing you at certain times. And if you're following through with the feeding schedule and stuff that we'll talk about, they get to associate you with something positive like food. So routine is super important. I've listed an example routine. I think, yeah, this one could definitely work for pigs. So maybe we get up in the morning and feed them when it's cool out. That's the biggest thing, is trying to feed them before this heat hits. So you'll have to get up early and get them fed. Maybe you rinse them in the morning to get them started, brush that hair. We'll talk about, actually, I don't have any skin and hair stuff in here, but for pigs, rinsing is probably your best bet when it comes to skin and hair, and using a rice root brush and some conditioner afterwards and training their hair to lay flat is going to be super important. So that's what I mean when I say working hair. Put them up for the day, keep them in the shaded area, whatever your pen may look like, but keeping them out of the sun is important for pigs. Then we maybe come out to feed that night. Maybe you do some showmanship practice before you feed. Rinse them again, cool their bodies down. That also counts as your exercise for pigs. And then feeding again, okay? So that's what I'm talking about routine, that repetitive schedule. And no, you don't have to do this every single day. I know that I loved being in the barn, so I was out there every single day, and this is what I did during the summer. This was my event, but I understand we have family trips and sports and things like that too. So do this as often as you can. If you can do this 2 to 3 times a week, great. If you can do it 5 to 7 days a week, even better. Your animals will only be better for that. The more you can build routine, the better they're going to be. Okay? Any questions on routine? All right, I know it sounds simple, but honestly, these are some of the most common problems I see as I work with kids all across the country on their projects. The next one is establish and utilize a deworming program. Now, this one can be a little bit controversial. Some people prefer deworming just once or twice in their project's lifespan. I'm personally going to tell you what we do at home. This is not something that Show-Rite is allowed to push and say, you know, Show-Rite told me to do this. This is Mari's personal preference and in my experience, what I recommend, and that's to deworm regardless of species, but once per month. The reason this is controversial is because some vets, like my vet who takes care of our cows at home, tells me, Mari, that's ridiculous. You're creating resistance in your animals. You don't need to be doing that. My other vet who understands the show industry and helps us with our embryo work in cows and stuff, she says that's a great preventative approach. I like what you're doing because your show animal is being asked to perform at a much higher level than our commercial livestock. And so with that, we want to prevent them from ever having to compete with internal parasites, which is what we're going up against when we're deworming. We're going after internal parasites, and what those internal parasites are doing is competing for nutrients. They're stealing those nutrients away from our livestock. And we're asking these show animals to perform at a higher level. So let's make sure their system's clear and we never have to deal with that. So we do encourage, or I do encourage and recommend deworming once per month. Pigs, sheep, goats, cattle, all of that have to be careful of your withdrawal date as you get closer to fair. Keep that in mind. Typically, they're a 45-day withdrawal date, so don't do that 45 days before show. But it will keep your animal performing to the best of their ability, keep their system clear of those internal parasites. Some of the other things we run into sometimes, oh, one more thing on the deworming, rotate those dewormers, okay? So sometimes we use Safeguard 1 month and Ivomec the next month. Find what's labeled for your species. And by rotating those, we're just trying to target different species of those internal parasites because there are multiple and those different dewormers can hit different ones. So it's important to keep them in rotation and keep them bringing in new different active ingredients on that. Some of the other things we face with parasites is external parasites. So not just internal worms, but external parasites like lice or mites can sometimes be an issue. Sometimes that shows up as you open a new bag of shavings for your pigs and the next day you come out and your pig is covered in red little bumps because there was maybe some mites in those shavings that have now infested your animal and been biting them on them all night. So how do we deal with that? There's a couple products on there. Prolate is my favorite for pigs. That's one that we use quite often. You can spray the environment to take care of that. So that's why I like that product. Permethrin is another one for sheep, goats, and cattle, I believe. I forget what's on the label, but just read your label, make sure you're following all those labeled directions. But just some tools to have in your toolbox to know if that comes up. Prolate, typically we mix with water. We put in a spray bottle, mix with water and spray it on the environment.
So it's not a whole lot different.
Correct. Just probably a different brand. Which one do you carry, Brett?
Well,
Okay. Yeah, likely so. I would need to look at the active ingredient and see what it's labeled, what permethrin is labeled for. You can just use that. Yep. No. Nope. Good question. Sorry, guys. Online, the question was, how do you apply that? So like I said, with Prolate, we typically mix it with water in a spray bottle and spray their environment, spray their shavings, all that type of stuff.
So
yeah.
Would it be safe to say when you deworm internal, you should also deworm or deparasite external at the same time?
Good question. Question this time was, they can't hear me online, so that's why I'm repeating this, not to be repetitive for you guys. But question was, if you're going to do it once per month internal deworming, should you also just once per month do an external parasite control? And I'll be honest, I just do the external parasite when I need it, when I start to see them show up. I guess my approach on that is, I guess I don't want to use it if I don't have to. Not only talking money wise, but if we're talking affecting skin and hair coats, things like that, I'm not going to introduce something if I don't have to. So on an as needed basis, I guess. Good questions. But mostly important, you can trust me on the once per month or follow your own vet's advice. Talk to your own veterinary and say, hey, Mari said this at a show meeting. What are your thoughts on it? Again, I'm taking a proactive approach because I never want my animal to have to compete for those nutrients. But some vets, like I said and talked about, do think that's a little overkill and could be creating some resistance in these animals. So talk to your vet, follow your vet's recommendations. They went to school a lot longer than I did on that. All right, next one is forage for ruminants. You guys are all pig people, so you don't have to worry about this, but just in case there's a few people online, we'll cover this real quick. Forage is essential for our ruminant animals, and just so we all know, what is a ruminant animal? Does anyone feel comfortable yelling that out? Yeah. Yeah, it's the stomach area. It's in regards to their digestive tract. So we are simple stomached. Pigs are simple stomached. That means they have one stomach to worry about. Ruminant animals have 4 compartments to their digestive tract. So it's much more complicated. They have a much more intense digestion process than we do as simple stomached people and animals. So naturally, ruminant animals are sheep, goats, pigs. That's who I'm talking, or I mean, sheep, goats, cattle. That's who I'm talking about. Naturally, they're grazing animals, right? If we think about them in their natural habitat, would be out on pasture, eating grass all day, every day. So with that being said, we have to provide some sort of forage in these ruminant animals' diets to keep their stomachs working correctly, keep that digestion tract working efficiently. We can't just pour grain to them and expect them to perform. We have to have some sort of forage in that diet to scratch their stomachs and keep it working correctly. So, but with that being said, we are feeding these show animals a very nutrient dense, high quality show feed. So we don't need super high quality hay to go along with that. Sometimes what happens when we do use super high quality hay along with our super nutrient dense show feeds is we spike their protein too high, spike their energy too high, one or the other. It can commonly cause bloat, so excess gas to happen or expand within their bellies and their rumen. It can cause loose stools. It can cause them to get a bellyache and go off of feed. So what we typically recommend with a show feed, and if you're pouring the grain to them, like we're going to talk about, we want all of their nutrients, most of their nutrients to come from that grain. We just want the hay in there to keep their stomachs working correctly. So I'm going to recommend a very average quality grass hay for all species, cattle, sheep, goats. That's what we like to use because our nutrients are coming from the grain. If all you have access to is alfalfa, that's okay. We can make it work. Alfalfa is very much higher quality than an average quality grass. So with that, we're probably going to want to lower our grain intake and control our grass or our alfalfa intake versus the free choice grass hay that we might do for cattle or something like that. We have to control it a lot more to find the balance and make sure we're not upsetting that stomach and keeping their stools nice and tight and no bloat happening. Okay, so it can be used or it can be done with high quality forage, but I typically recommend just an average quality grass type of hay. All right, and for those of you who can't see the screen, specifically cattle, I love free choice grass hay. Let them have all they want to it. Sheep and goats, they tend to get what we call hay bellies a little bit easier. So we control that hay intake amount just a little bit more. For sheep, I typically say just grab a 5-gallon bucket, throw a couple of flakes in there and keep that full of grass hay so they can munch on it throughout the day. But not have, you know, a little square bale in there. I don't want them to have all free access. We want to control that. And then goats, actually, we control that even more. They only need it really 3 to 4, maybe 5 times a week. And it's just a small handful. I call it a bird's nest because young lady's handful here is going to be a lot smaller than mama's handful if they were going to feed at different times. So if you want to think of like a small bird's nest size, that's pretty typical and what we can all kind of imagine, regardless of our hand size. Okay. All right. Next, number 5 is find a feed program and stick to it. You'll see the pink bags up there because that's the brand that pays my bills every month, but this could be for IFA Platinum Show feed. It could be for whatever feed you have chosen. What I want you to get out of this message here is to be consistent with it. I don't want you to be switching products every month. I don't want you to be switching complete feeds every week. I want you to find products and stick with that brand, stick with that product specifically as long as you can. Anytime we introduce a new feed or a new product, we have the risk or take the risk of having digestive upsets, stressing out their system. And so that's why I'm pushing this consistency. So when selecting a feed brand, consider the following. Is it available to you? Okay. I don't want you to get started on Show-Rite if you can't get it every time you need it. I'm a big advocate for it should be there when you need it. And I want you guys to find a product that's going to be successful and dependable for you. So find a brand. Brett would be a great one to talk to, what he carries, and find that one that he's going to stock that's going to be there when you need it. Okay, so is it available to you and is it consistent? Every time you open that bag, that ration or that feed and product should look the same, should smell the same, should feel the same. So that animal, it should taste the same to them. We don't want a ration or a formula where, you know, the company changes it every time they make it based on the ingredients they have on hand. We want a consistent formula, consistent ration. So it should look the same, smell the same, taste the same every time. Okay. Next question to ask yourself when you're looking for a brand, do you have a feed resource? Do you have someone who knows these products and can help you? So if Brett's carrying his brand, can he help you through the feeding process if something comes up? Or your 4-H agent, maybe they've utilized it for years with their kids and their group. Someone who has experience with these products and can help you navigate it, because there's a lot of products out there. Knowing which one to utilize can be a little tough. Or do you have access to someone like me who you can text me, call me, send me pictures and videos of your projects, and I will make a feed recommendation for you. That's just a person who can help you navigate it, like I said, because this can be kind of an intimidating world with as many products and supplements and feeds out there as there are. Lastly, is the feed quality that you're going to purchase and stay with, is that going to be on the same level that you're wanting to compete at? You know, I have a lot of customers that will make a huge investment on their animal, which means they are committed to being successful, whether it's their county or state fair. And then they have to cut back on their feed budget because they've spent so much on that animal, but they're now dumping a bottom of the barrel type of feed product into a very, very high quality animal and expecting to keep that high quality animal at that level. And that's just not the case. We have to, you know, put into it what we're wanting to get out of it. So what level are you wanting to compete at? And is that product line that you're going to go with, is that competing and being successful at that level that you're after? Okay. Any questions on that one? Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple. Here's where we get a little bit tricky and where this one can kind of take you to the next level is monitoring weight gain. Okay. This is one that I find families do not, just flat out do not do enough, is monitoring their weight gain. It's the situations where fair's in 30 days and I get calls and we have to either make a pig gain 100 pounds in 30 days, or that pig is 300 pounds and we have 30 days till show. And we have to hold weight. So those are the situations that we are trying to avoid with this point right here, managing weight up until show. So I've got an equation up here. We're going to do, yeah. Yep, let's back up.
Okay, go ahead online with your question. Did you have a question?
Any questions online? Maybe not.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. When, like, how do you know when they need to be, like, do you just shave them when the show's about, like, before the day the show is supposed to start?
I didn't quite hear that.
Are you talking about a pig? Or what species are you talking about?
Say lamb.
Or do you have
Lamb.
You have a lamb. Is that correct?
So yes.
Yes.
Okay, so when should you shear your lamb? I guess for me, and it could depend on who you ask, your breeder might have a different answer for you, but I'm gonna wait until as close to that show as possible to shear that lamb. The reason is because I don't want to damage their skin and hide underneath, whether that's from sun or an injury. I wanna protect that hide as much as I can. So we typically wait, or my customers typically wait until the day before show to shear that lamb. That would be my answer.
Does that answer your question?
Thanks.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, we have one more online too, when we're done.
Well, I was just gonna ask, 'cause I know I've already talked to some people in the county that's with pigs. We're gonna have some pigs because our bears later.
Okay.
It's gonna be a weight problem. They're gonna be too big. How's the best way to hold weight? What would you recommend to hold weight so they're not getting too big? 'Cause
Yeah.
if you wait too late into the deal, then you lose it.
Totally.
So what's your recommend? Because we're gonna have several pigs in the county. It's gonna have a problem.
Okay. Question for those of you online was, how do we hold weight, or what's the best strategy to slow down average daily gain, and put some hold on them, pump the brakes a little bit? So there are products. I love to incorporate oats at the pretty early to incorporate or just help slow down. Typically, I'm doing maybe a 75-25 blend, 25% being oats, 75 being the feed. I'll start there and I'll see if that slows them down any. Then if that's not working, beet pulp is an option. Beet pulp, soaking it overnight, beet pulp shreds, soak it overnight, and then incorporate another pound of that while pulling out a pound of feed. The problem with beet pulp is it actually comes with more energy than people realize because it's a sugar beet, right? So through the processing, they extract sugar, but there's still a lot of sugar left in that shred. So we're getting a lot of energy, and with energy that equals more calories, which means more gain. So the reason it helps hold is because it acts as a filler. It makes them feel full so they don't eat as much, but you're still getting extra calories from that. So I typically won't use beet pulp if I don't have to, but if you have to, there you go. My favorite product though, and I'm not just being a salesperson here, I used it growing up before Show-Rite paid me to do my job. It's called Depth and Dimension. It is a Show-Rite branded product, comes in a 50-pound bag, and it's been formulated to hold a pig or slow down average daily gain, utilizing a high protein and high fiber ration. What that does for you that beet pulp and oats won't do is it keeps their shape in them. It keeps them fresh, they don't get stale on it. They won't lose their muscle tone and their shape, which is super important, obviously, for a show pig. Commonly, when we try to shut them down, we either have to starve them and then not feed them, and then they lose their muscle, their whole top melts off of them. So that depth and dimension is a really good one. How you utilize it is you typically mix it 50-50. So maybe it's an add-in. Yeah. If you're just trying to slow down average daily gain, I'd tell you to go 50-50, feed half so maybe 2 pounds of feed, 2 pounds of depth and dimension. But if you really have to pump the brakes on one, like you are 300 pounds and have 20 days to go, you can utilize it as your sole ration. It's fully fortified with vitamins and minerals, so you're not going to be depleting them of their full nutrient value. But I wouldn't recommend doing that for longer than 2 weeks, I would say. 2 weeks. So I do love that product. It works. It does its job very, very well. That one's called Depth and Dimension. Yeah. Yep. 50-pound bag. Yeah. 50-pound bag. We actually just ran an ad, not an ad, but we advertise it on our Show-Rite Facebook right now because we're seeing that trend a lot across the country. I don't know if it's because we're still in the trend of buying older pigs and thinking that it takes longer for them to feed out, but our genetics have improved so much in the show industry that they're gaining faster, reaching their endpoint faster. So we're seeing that from coast to coast, that pigs are heavy this year, and we are already selling a lot of depth and dimension right now, so people can slow them down now and have more wiggle room at the end, instead of holding them so hard. So that's a great product, I would say. Yeah.
So if a pig and we want them to gain 2 to 3 pounds per day.
Yep.
So for a week, then they should be gaining like 14 pounds a week.
Yep.
And if they're not, then what do you need to do?
Yep. So question was if, on average, I've got some numbers up here, average gains, pigs, you can expect to typically gain 2 to 3 pounds per head per day. That can vary based on genetics, based on the brand of feed you're using, how much you're feeding, et cetera. So typically that equates to maybe 14 pounds a week. If they're not gaining that 14 pounds a week and that worries you because maybe you projected out, they're only gaining 1.5 pounds a day and you count how many days you have till show, and that means they're only going to show up at 200 pounds and not going to make minimum weight. So we need to push them now, right? We need to increase that average daily gain now. How do we do that? The best way is to increase consumption. So it's as simple as maximizing their feed intake. That can look like feeding smaller amounts more often throughout the day. So incorporating a lunch feeding, because it's pretty hard to ask a pig to eat more than 3 to 4 pounds at a time, right? That's a lot of feed for those little guys. So if we can feed 2 pounds 3 times a day, that means they're going to intake 6 pounds total throughout that day. Versus if we were to just try to feed 3 pounds morning and night, they might not clean it all up. So incorporating more feedings, less amounts more often is one way to do that. Feeding at your cold hours, so early in the morning, late at night when it's cooled down. And I mean, it can be late. I sometimes used to have to wait until 9 o'clock at night until it was cooled down and those pigs were ready to eat. So that's one thing. Then you can add calories. So how do we add calories? We can do that through fat supplements. We can do that through protein supplements, depending on what type of pig you have. You might have a pig who's maybe big and tall, and he probably would need more fat just because he's big and tall. We don't want to give him more protein, which would continue to grow him vertically. We want to grow him widthwise a little bit. So we want to do that with fat. So I'd tell you to try a fat supplement. If you have a pig that's a little bit shorter bodied and he's growing fine widthwise, we want him to get more frame on him, then we could go with a protein supplement, things like that. So adding calories with top dresses. Then controlling their environment as much as possible, keeping them cool, fans on them all day, rinsing them a couple times a day so that their appetite stays up and they want to eat, those types of things.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. One is in the
Okay.
chat, which I think you just answered all of this, but we'll make
Okay.
sure. The question was, how do we add weight and fat to our cattle while getting muscle finish on them?
Okay, good question. So on the cattle side of things, how do we add fat and weight without sacrificing their muscle tone? So a couple of things I would ask is like, what is your base feed? Is your base feed conducive with what you're trying to do? Meaning, are you feeding a high protein, high fiber feed and where we could be feeding maybe a high fat feed to do what we need it to do? So I'd question that. And if you're feeding a high protein, high fiber, that would be like a grower type of feed. I'd encourage you to switch to a finisher, which would be higher fat. That's one way to solve that problem. But we also have top dresses for that. We have fat supplements to encourage that. One product that we have that I love on the cattle side, pig side especially, it's called Muscle in Motion. And I love that one because it's a moderate protein and a higher fat content. It's a 21% protein with still a 7% fat. So you're not just adding protein to increase muscle and bulk, but you're also adding cover and bloom with that one too. That can enhance weight gain as well. So there are lots of products out there. The ones I'd recommend would be switching to a finisher feed, making sure you're on that for your calf, getting as much energy into them as possible with that. Fat supplements, we have one called Stamina. There's one by a competitor called Amplify. We don't have a pelleted cattle fat product. So Amplify is a Purina product that I use and like on cattle. It's a horse product, but we use it on calves a lot. Muscle in Motion is probably my favorite one to add on the cattle side, but can help with pigs as well.
Okay, so we have a hand raised on.
Okay.
So go ahead online. You have to unmute.
Okay. So I have a lamb. Should it how much fat does the lamb usually grow if they keep eating and eating?
Okay.
Gracie, honey.
How much fat should a lamb have?
Yeah.
So it is a good question. How much fat should a lamb get? I don't know that I have a direct answer. I would say that most lamb feeds probably are between 3 to 5% fat level in their content. And those feeds are formulated to cater to that animal all around. So not only just in terms of fat content, but protein and fiber and your vitamins and minerals. But maybe more importantly is how much should a lamb eat to grow properly? And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. We're going to talk about how much each species should be consuming. But I would say most lamb feeds are probably around 3 to 5% fat content. Okay, any more questions for the time being? Yeah. At the end of show or, yep. Okay, what's the ideal weight for a pig at the show? So end result, it changes based on your pig's type and kind. And I know that sounds silly, but there are different, some pigs are big and long, some pigs are short and muscular. Just like us, when we were, I'm trying to think of people I could compare myself to. Darren is a very tall and well-built, bulky man, right? I'm a little bit shorter and more narrower made. That's how livestock are too. There are some people in livestock who are built bigger and wider, and other people who are built narrower and smaller. Livestock are the same way. So some pigs will look their best at 260 pounds because maybe they're a little bit smaller framed. Other pigs might need to be that 290 pounds because they are larger framed, and that's when they're going to look their best. So it's going to vary. I would say on average, most pigs are walking into the show ring around 280 pounds. That would be my average guess. But it's important to also be conscious of what your fair's weight regulations are. A lot of fairs still have bottom weights or minimum weights and top weights that you have to be conscious of. So be sure to check with your extension agent and know that so that you can be in that window that you need to be. Okay, good questions. All right, we'll keep working on this. So how do we monitor weight? Average daily gain. Those of you on the screen or online, I'll try to voice this so you can work with us, but ADG stands for average daily gain. And I want you guys to be calculating this not just once, not just twice throughout your project, but a few times throughout your project to see if they're on track. So what we do or how we find their average daily gain is we take their goal weight. So young lady just brought up a great point. What should our goal weight be? Let's go ahead and just average 280 pounds for a pig. Okay, we've got pig people here. We'll say that, but this can be utilized. This equation can be utilized for all species, cattle, sheep, and goats. Find your goal weight. So let's say 280 for pigs. And then you're going to subtract your current weight. Do we know what our pigs weigh?
86.
Okay, perfect. Let's do a little math. I can't do that off the top of my head. 280 minus 86 pounds, 194. You got it. Smart girl. I've gotten spoiled with this calculator on the tip of my fingers. I don't do math in my head anymore. Keep that up. That's good. All right. So that pig, your pig needs to gain 194 pounds to show, to get your goal weight. Do we know how many days till show? An estimate is okay.
31, 16, 30 plus 15.
Okay, that's 92 days. All right, so pig needs to gain 194 pounds in 92 days. So we're going to take that 194 pounds divided by 92 days till show, and we get 2.1. Okay, that means our pig needs to gain 2.1 pounds per day to reach your goal weight. That sets you up for success already because you're not just doing that for the minimum weight at fair. You're trying to get to where your pig's going to look his best and be the most competitive. So 2 pounds a day. We said on average, you can expect a pig to gain 2 to 3 pounds per day. So you're in a safe zone. You don't have to push your pig. You don't have to hold your pig. Right now, your pig can coast. But let's say you start feeding that pig the recommended amount that I'm going to tell you here in a minute, and your pig starts to gain up to 4 pounds a day. And you're like, holy cow, my pig's now getting way too big, way too fast. What do I do? Then that tells us, let's say you calculate this again, find he's gaining 4 pounds a day. you're going to back down on consumption. Okay. That's going to be your number one step. Then you might incorporate the oats that we talked about. And if that doesn't slow them down, then we're going to maybe look at depth and dimension. So this is going to keep you ahead of the game. If you calculate this and reweigh your animal once a month, will keep you on track. I have families that want their animal to come in at a specific 285 pounds. Maybe 1350 for a calf. They weigh their animal weekly because they want to walk into the ring at that weight. So it can be done as often as you want, but I would definitely recommend doing it at least once per month if you can. It'll keep you ahead of schedule. It'll keep you out of those really tricky situations where you're, like I said, 300 pounds before fair, 30 days before fair, or need to gain 100 pounds 30 days before fair. So like I said, that equation can be done with any species, sheep, goats, cattle, hogs, and it will keep you ahead of schedule, okay? Any questions on that one? Did I lose anyone on that math? That's a really important one. Okay, here's where we'll talk about, actually the next one's where we'll talk about how much feed. First, I want to talk about hand feeding versus self-feeding, okay? I know that self-feeding, having a self-feeder is very convenient. Totally understand that, especially when you go on family vacations or you have sports morning and night. But what that doesn't help us do is control the weight of that animal or control the consumption of that animal. So we never know how much that animal is actually consuming or taking in, which means we can't tell or control how much they're gaining. All right. So it's just up in the air. It's whatever that animal feels like. And that can get us into those tricky situations where we're tracking low or heavy on weight. So why hand feed? A couple benefits to it: builds trust between you and your animal. Like I said, if you go out there and feed twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, your animal is going to associate you with something positive, which is food, and they like food. So that's going to put a positive relationship in their mind with you, which builds trust and gets them to like you. All right. So it's easier to work with them. Number 2, it trains them to eat. When I take our livestock to shows, jackpots, county fair, whatever it is, I want them to be full all day while we show, because you never know if you're going to walk in the ring at 9 a.m. or 1 p.m. Maybe grand drive is later at 4 p.m. and we want to make it to the grand drive. So we want to keep our animal full all day long. So we change their feeding schedule a little bit when we're at the show. We feed every couple hours, smaller amounts every couple hours to keep that animal full, regardless of what species it is. So I want my animal to be able to know and be trained to eat when a feed pan is put in front of them. That's what this hand feeding does. We have a 20-20 rule. We call it 20 minutes. They get a feed pan in front of them. If they don't clean it up within 20 minutes, we pull that so they can't graze on it all day. It trains them to eat when that feed pan's in front of them. Cattle, we give a little bit longer because they have such a large amount to eat. We give them 30, 45 minutes, then pull that feed pan. So again, it's training them to eat on your schedule, not when they want to. Last, it's an opportunity to check twice per day for anything wrong. Are they starting to get a runny nose? Are they starting to get a little cough? Are their eyes turning red and runny? Do they have a loose stool? Something like that. Something that with a self-feeder, you might not catch for a couple of days from the time that their cough has developed from a little dry cough into a very heavy kind of dog barking type of cough. And we're already to the point of pneumonia. We got to get a vet to treat it, versus we could have caught it ahead of time and gotten treatment started before it got worse. So those are things to look for. Are they not eating? Are they cleaning up their feed? That's something we can't tell with a self-feeder. Are they not drinking water? Check the things that run. So like I said, runny eyes, runny noses, their butts, do they have a runny stool? Okay. So I'm a big advocate for hand feeding. Some people like to wait. They'll do a self-feeder up until 100 pounds for a pig or something. Honestly, I'm the type that I'm going to control that from the very start. And pigs usually get sick when they're younger, right? Because we're bringing them to a new environment. They're exposed to other animals from different breeders, and those we commingle them and they get germs. So they get sick when they're younger. So I want to be checking on them 2 to 3 times a day to see if and identify if there is something going wrong from the very start. All right. Now, weighing your feed. This is where we'll talk about how much to feed. This is very, very important and crucial. Also helps you manage their weight, so you can be ahead of the game and not having to be proactive to a sticky situation when it comes to weight gain. So how do you weigh your feed? That's a very simple question, but something that a lot of people don't think about. The best way that I can tell you for these smaller species is just go grab a kitchen scale from Walmart or your grocery store. A baking scale fits nicely in your feed room or in your barn, and you just put your feed on it and it tells you how much it weighs, okay? If you have calf, how do you weigh your big heavy buckets of feed? The easiest way that I found is a luggage scale. You can find those at Walmart, Target, wherever. And it's just a little handheld thing. You hook the bucket on and it's supposed to weigh a suitcase, but we're going to weigh feed buckets instead. So those are the couple of ways, super easy to find those, very accessible and fairly cheap. I found a luggage scale the other day for $10 at TJ Maxx. I grabbed it because we needed a new scale at home. So those are easy. So how much should your animal be eating? Cattle, we recommend 2.5% of their body weight in grain per head per day. So that might seem like a lot to you guys, but again, we're asking these show animals to perform at a much higher level than our commercial animals. And like I told you before, we're also expecting all of their nutrients to come from the show feed, not from their hay. So that's why we're feeding 2.5% of their body weight, is because we're going to be pushing them a little bit harder. Obviously you can adjust that. So if your calf is tracking heavy, maybe you do your average daily gain and project their weight, and they might come into fair at 1,500 pounds with the rate of gain they're doing. You're like, whoa, I need to slow that down. Let's lower that from 2.5% down to 2% and see if that drops their average daily gain, or vice versa. If your steer is tracking light, we need to push that guy. We're going to bump that up to 3% of their body weight in grain. Okay. See how that works? We fluctuate the scale based on their average daily gain. Next, sheep and goats should be consuming 3.5 to 4% of their body weight. It's a good rule of thumb. I would encourage you to track their average daily gain. And if they're gaining on track, you can stick with that 3.5%. If you need to push them a little harder, go up to 4% of their body weight. Okay. And then swine is 3.5 to 4% of their body weight as well. I do have this handy little chart. I should really make a chart for all of the species, but this is for pigs. Because we feed we feed 4% of their body weight when they're little, but as they get bigger, we feed a lower body percentage. So feel free to take a picture of that on your cell phone, or if you want to get it later, you can grab my cell phone number and I can text it to you. Anything, however I can get it to you, let me know and I'll send it to you. Kind of small up on that screen. Any questions on how much we should be feeding our animals? Okay, we'll keep cruising. We're almost done. Number 9, so supplements. Supplements are a great tool. Supplements mean that we have our complete base feed, right? What we feed every day, but then there are supplements and additives or top dresses. They're referred to in a lot of different ways, but they all mean the same thing. It's a product that you buy separate and add to your ration. It's going to either alter their protein or their fat or their fiber. There's a lot of different reasons that supplements are used. There's even supplements for hair growth, hoof health, structural improvements, anything out there. There's really a supplement for it these days. So we need to be utilizing supplements with a purpose. Way too often I get called and people say, Mari, the person who won Grand Champion Lamb last year used your Right Time product. I need to use that on my lamb. And I'm like, oh, really? Let's see your lamb. Let me see if that's the right product. And 9 times out of 10, it's not the right product. But because the Grand Champion used it last year, that feeder thinks they need to use it too. And that's not always the case. Every animal is going to have different strengths and weaknesses, and we need to cater to those weaknesses to build them up in that aspect. So that's what I mean when I say supplements need to be utilized with a purpose. We need to be identifying that animal's weakness and find the product that is designed to improve on that trait specifically. Okay. So yeah, again, ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish? Are you trying to add muscle? Are you trying to add fat? Are you trying to increase their hair quality? Are you wanting more rib shape and capacity? Then we would want to increase fiber, things like that. There's all sorts of things we need to be doing, but identify what you're trying to accomplish. Then ask yourself, is this product designed to do that? Don't just feed it because someone else fed it and found success with it. And lastly, do you understand how to use that product correctly? We have a product called Swell that does wonders, and everyone wants to use it because a lot of the winners use it, but then they read the label and it's very confusing. And I wish we would change it, but the feeding directions make no sense. You have to do a bunch of math calculations to figure out how to use this product. So a lot of times I'll get calls, and thankfully people call and reach out and say, hey, this is not making any sense to me. How do I feed this product? And I'm so glad that people call and reach out. I hope you guys will too, if you ever come across that. But do you understand how to use the product? Because if you don't, and you just decide to feed 2 scoops of it, it's not guaranteed to work. All right. Those feeding directions are on there for a reason, and we need to use the product in the manner that it's been proven to work. And we prove that through trials and feed trials and runs that we do on our own time. We do the behind the work so that you guys can be successful down the road. All right. So just some things to think about with supplements. Lastly, number 10, practice makes perfect. Okay. Obviously, the more time you spend with your animal, the more of a bond and relationship you're going to build with them. But I want you to have more than a bond with your project. I want you to have a mutual respect too. They are, how I look at it and how I teach my kids that I help very closely is these are athletes, and we're asking them to perform as athletes. So I'm their coach. You as an exhibitor are your animal's coach, and there has to be a mutual respect there. You have to respect their space while they have to respect you and what you're asking them to do. So the more time you spend practicing with them, getting them used to your whip and getting them used to the signals that your whip is supposed to tell them, the better you're going to be off in the ring. And the other thing about this is obviously practice at home is one thing, but the show ring is a totally different environment than at home, right? The pigs and lambs and goats and cattle are all used to their environment at home and how you practice with them, where they walk, the environment, everything. But when you get to a show, that is totally different. It's not only a new space, a new barn, a new house for them, but there's usually microphones and music and loud noises and fans and blowers and clippers going everywhere. It's a lot to take in for these animals who are used to your nice quiet pens at home, right? So why do we throw our animals into the county fair as our goal show without doing a practice run like a jackpot show? We just take them to this county fair and throw them into this new chaotic environment and expect them to perform as they do at home. And that just doesn't happen a lot of times. So my advice would be to get out into a ring, a show ring, at least once or twice before. And I don't even care if it's a show ring. Some people, I live up in Montana and we don't have as many jackpots as some people in the Midwest. So I have a lot of kids who just haul to each other's house, but they create as much of a show environment as possible. They all come on the same day. They turn the music up loud. They try to have a megaphone. If they don't have access to a microphone, they bring a megaphone, and they try to imitate that environment as much as possible. So you could organize that with your 4-H group. You could haul to a jackpot. And even if you don't want to pay the entry fee to show in the ring, you could just go tie your calf up all day or put your pig in their pen so they get used to the environment. That's going to desensitize them. It's going to help them feel comfortable when you do get to your goal show. And it's going to help them perform better and be less stressed at that goal show. All right. So usually the first time in the ring for both the animal and the exhibitor, so you kids too, is the worst performance. So don't wait for your goal show, your county or state fair to be that first time in the ring. Try to create that experience somewhere else so you can do better at your end goal. Okay. Questions on that one? All right. Pretty easy. So at the end of the day, you guys, don't forget that livestock are judged on a few different things, okay? Livestock are judged on visual presentation. You have control over that. That's skin and hair. That's how you present yourself too. That's your dress, your showmanship attire. Performance, so that's weight gain. Did they make it to their market weight? Did they make it to their end maturity? You have control of that with feed consumption, right? You don't have control of the genetics, which can dictate that sometimes, but you do have control over the feed. So performance you can manage, and soundness. Soundness is referring to their skeleton, their structural base. You don't have control over that, okay? That's one thing that you've already purchased with your animal. That's built into their genetics. What their skeleton is what it will always be throughout their growing period. So there are two things out of those three that you have control over. That's visual appearance and performance, okay? Lastly, it's important you manage your project, not just feed it, okay? All of these things we've gone through tonight are management tips, daily care tips, and you can't just manage them for the last 30 days and expect to do well. You have to manage them from the very start all the way through your project, and then you will reach your ultimate success. And Finally, you can't just buy a champion, you have to feed and raise it, okay? This goes back to some of the families I've helped and talked to, and they put all of their money into, the best animal at the sale. They brought that one home, the high seller, and then they go home and they don't manage it correctly. They don't feed the level of feed that they want to compete at, and that grand champion that they thought they just bought starts to go downhill. A grand champion is managed. A grand champion is not bought, it's made in the management process, okay? Now I don't know what time we've got, but I do have time to run through some products. If you guys want to talk products specifically, if we're tapped out and you want to talk to me one-on-one about products, we can do that as well. But that's the meat and potatoes of the presentation. Yeah.
How far before the show, like before the fair, if they're new and they're not sure, like 30 days before, if they're just not sure whether animal is, can they still do the videos and send them to you?
Yeah, Brett's question is a great one. How far in advance do we need to start making changes to get our animal where they need to be? Whether that's making feed changes or adding supplements or reaching out to me or your 4-H leader for help. I'd encourage you to do it earlier rather than later, but yeah, 30 days is enough for us to get in crisis mode and make some changes. I'll say for cattle, it typically takes 45 days to see a nutritional change. So you want to start any supplements at least 45 days before show. I'd encourage you to start thinking about it 60 days before show, because that gives us some wiggle room if we need to increase the amount we're feeding because we're not seeing the desired results, or vice versa. We're seeing what we want, so we're going to pull back on that feeding rate. It just gives us more wiggle room to make sure that we've got that animal dialed in. But I would say 45 to 60 days is ideal to start making changes. 30 days, we can get it done. We can get some things done. I'm not going to promise we can put 100 pounds on your pig in 30 days, but we can dang sure try. So yeah, 30 days is pushing it, but we can do what we can. I'll put my contact number. Well, I guess first, do we want to go over some products? How are we feeling? Good on time? Keep rolling a little bit. All right, my contact info will be at the end, or my business cards for those of you here are on the table along with some literature. You're welcome to, that's my personal cell phone number. Text me pictures and videos of your projects and I'll tell you my honest thoughts as an unbiased person and make some feed recommendations. And even if you're using like the IFA Platinum feed or something like that, I'm happy to work with you and do what I can to make you successful, all right? So species specific feeding, we'll just go through a few products. I know we have a few other species online, so we'll cover them all just to be safe, but we'll really focus on pigs here in a minute when we get there. So Show-Rite is obviously, like I said, the company that pays my bills. That's the brand we're going to focus on. But like I encouraged you earlier, find the brand that's going to be consistent and available to you. Okay. But our steer feed is called Throttled Up. It's that first one you see there in the pink. And typically people will stay on that from start to finish. You never have to switch off of it unless your calf's getting too fat or gaining too fast. It is known to really put the weight on one. Most of my customers will see like a 5 to 6 pounds of feed to 1 pound of gain ratio, which is pretty impressive. Typically with cattle, that's bumped up to 8 or 9 pounds of feed to 1 pound of gain. This is a very nutrient dense product, but we've taken a different approach with cattle. In the past, our industry has pushed for a grower feed first and then a finisher feed second. What Show-Rite was seeing was that calves weren't getting finished. Finish means fat. Okay, they weren't getting fat cover soon enough, and they were walking into the show ring too thin and skinny, then they would place lower, right? They also weren't gaining fast enough. So we switch things up and we actually encourage you to feed this high fat feed from the start of your calf. We want to get them fat early so that we are ahead of the game. And if we need to, we can switch to a lower protein or lower fat, higher protein feed to manage them until show. But at least we know we've got the fat cover developed. We've got them weighing what they need to weigh, and we're good to go. So Throttled Up is our biggest steer feed and what I'd recommend for any calves on feed right now. Unless your calf's too fat, then we would look at something else. We'd look at the phase 2 or phase 3. But really Throttled Up is our most popular and most successful feed on the steer side of things. But heifers are a little different, right? If you're feeding a breeding heifer versus a market steer, we want to keep her nice and trim, not as fat. So we're going to use the cruiser feed. This is a lower fat, higher protein type of product. If you have a breeding heifer, just know that's the one we'd go with instead of throttled up. Okay, we do have a product called HF. That's a high fiber feed. That's what that HF stands for. It's utilized a lot on the steer side of things if you have one that we need to hold weight on, kind of like that depth and dimension product we talked about on the pig side. This is a holding product for steers. All right. Any questions online for cattle? I don't know if we had any cattle kids online tonight, but wanted to make sure we covered it. All right, goats. Really, we have one product for market goats. That's the top one. It's called Advancer Plus. Advancer Plus is our Cadillac, top of the line. Won't find a better feed out there because it has every bell and whistle possible in that bag. I mean, anything from gut health products, anything to muscle building. There's a muscle building supplement already in that product, already in the bag. So it really does, what we've tried to do is lessen your need for supplements and trying to put it all in the bag. It's a product that you utilize from start to finish. It's a pellet, so those goats won't sort the textured feed out. So yeah, it's as simple as that, start to finish, Advancer Plus. Get the most out of your goat for sure with that product. We have two other products, Fat and Sassy and a texturized feed called GOAT, literally called goat. Those are typically more for the breeding side of things, like if you're feeding a breeding doe. But Advancer Plus is really our one nationwide. There's not been many other competitors able to beat us at major state shows with that Advancer Plus product. Definitely the most winningest feed on the market. And I can say that confidently, not just because I'm biased and work for the brand. Lamb feed, easy peasy. We just have one product. If you're feeding a market wether or a ewe, doesn't matter. Nuco lamb feed is the feed you'd go with. This one's very similar to that Advancer Plus on the goat side. When I say we added every bell and whistle in there, we truly did. Again, it has the gut health products. It has a muscle building product already in there, and some extra oils for fat deposition and handling quality. It has urinary calculi protection. I should have said that on the goat side. It also has coccidiosis protection. Should have said that on the goat side as well. So really, we have tried to really make your animal as healthy as possible so that they can perform to the best of their ability on these feeds. All right. And again, there is literature on these products that we're talking about over on the table if you'd like, or you can always find info on them on Show-Rite's website for those of you online. Yeah, question. Yes, start to finish. Good question. I didn't say that. Thanks for bringing it up. For the lamb feed, just like the goat feed, you can feed that from start to finish. Never have to switch them off.
So we have lambs
Okay,
and they're maybe a month old.
Little.
When did you start that product?
that one, actually, we have a lot of producers who use it as a creep feed even. So you can start it as early as when you would a creep feed. When they're that little, still on mama or bottles, they can definitely be picking at that and getting started on it. Okay, swine products. Here are my pig people. I'm going to go straight to this one because this is the most available to you. And I've talked to you about, I want you to use what's available to you, what's consistent, and Team 18 is going to be the most available to you through IFA and Brett. Team 18 is our #1 seller across the country. All right. It's an 18% protein, which means that's a fairly moderate protein level. Okay. We like that because it can cater to different types and kinds of pigs. I was talking to you earlier about pigs that might be tall and skinny and other pigs that might be short and squatty and muscular. Team 18 is going to be able to be fed to any of those types of pigs without getting one overly muscled or no shape at all. You know, it's right in the middle of the road. So we may have to tailor them at the end with some extra supplementation to dial them in. But if you're feeding multiple head of pigs, it is kind of nice to have one product in the feed room and utilize it from start to finish. So that's our most popular pig product, Team 18. What I will say is this one is not our most premium feed. I talked to you on the goat side, on the sheep side about how many bells and whistles we threw into those products. We have pig feeds that are fancier than Team 18. We have pig feeds that have more gut health products in them. they have an increased amino acid profile, which is really important for pigs because amino acids are essential for building muscle, and they're the building blocks for muscle essentially, but it helps with weight gain and performance as well. So these products, because they're more premium, come at a higher price essentially, okay? They are still accessible to you, but it would be more of a special order versus Team 18 is stocked year round for our distributor. But if you prefer a meal, a mash type of feed, some people just personal preference prefer a mash. Our 17.5G is what that product is called. That's one that you can feed from start to finish, never have to switch your pigs off. Again, it can cater to any type and kind. Love the flexibility of that product, and it's love the consistency using it from start to finish. But if you prefer a pellet, we offer two products. We have a high protein one, charged up, and a low protein one called toned down. Now, I told you Team 18 is an 18% protein, and so is charged up. And I told you Team 18 was considered a moderate level protein, but I just told you charged up is considered a high protein. So why are they the same number, but I rank them differently? It all comes down to that increased amino acid profile that charged up has. Because of the increased amino acid profile, it feeds way more like a 19 or 20%. You're going to see more muscle shape, more average daily gain, more performance out of that pig. Even though it's the same protein level as Team 18, you're going to see more out of that pig. All right. So with that being said, sometimes these pigs who are fed charged up can start to get overly muscled or too tight. We start to see them doing what I call like a little dance. So when they're walking, they're just kind of roaching their top. They get tight structurally. They can't move as freely. That means they're too hyped up on protein. So that's when toned down comes into play, and we encourage you to mix charged up and toned down together to reduce that protein content, moderate that pig a little bit. But some people feed toned down all by itself even. If you have a pig that is what I call overly muscled, think of like a little Arnold Schwarzenegger pig. He's just really buffed up. He's been to the gym too many days in his life, and we need to tone his muscle shape down and get some more fat cover on him. That's when a product like toned down would come into play. Okay, so I wanted you to know about those feeds. Team 18 gets the job done. We still win a ton of county fairs across the country on the Team 18. But if you're trying to up your level, you're trying to compete at a little bit higher level and want something a little more premium, here's your options, okay? Yeah, Brett.
I have a question. I've had a couple discussions with guys that's bought charged up.
Okay.
Tell me if I've told them wrong. Where our fares later on, I thought we were better off on the Team 18.
Yeah.
Rather than pushing them harder. Is that fair to say? Or?
That's a great point. So the question was, with their fare being later, are they better off on Team 18 versus charged up, because we don't want to push them too hard, too fast? And that is a great point. So there's a couple directions we could go. Yes, you could use the Team 18 and see lower average daily gains. You're also going to see less muscle shape. Some people want to keep that muscle shape in them. You'll even see better hair and skin quality on these products compared to Team 18. So the other route you could go is ordering in both charged up and toned down and mixing them 50-50 to moderate that a little bit. It just depends on if that customer specifically wants to continue feeding these premium products, or if they're okay with maybe taking down that muscle shape a little bit, seeing them melt a little bit, and coming back with a top dress like Muscle in Motion or a supplement to get that shape back at the end.
What if you fed like the Team 18 up till say 45
Yeah.
days before and then started mixing this with it, you still get the.
You could still
every time
see.
you get the muscle
Yep.
definition and everything.
Yeah, question was that time, what if we fed Team 18 for the duration, the longer duration, and then came back at the 45-day mark and started feeding charged up? Would we see the increased performance? And the answer is yes, you would see the increased muscle shape, increased performance. You could do that with a top dress too, though. You could do that by purchasing Muscle in Motion and adding that onto the Team 18. So there's just it's just different approaches that we could take.
The muscle and motion, how much, when would you start feeding that?
Yeah, so that's it falls into that 45 to 60 day category. You can see results within 30 days, but again, I encourage you to start earlier so that you can play with it and make sure you're going to obtain the results that you want. Okay. All right, then we get to top dresses and supplements, which we've already hit on a little bit. I've separated them based on what they do. So muscle building versus fat versus fiber, things like that. The one I'll really tell you about is Muscle in Motion because it's the one that's probably most popular. It's multi-species, so sheep, goats, cattle, pigs, you can all utilize this product. Love this one because it kills two birds with one stone. It's going to give you muscle mass, muscle dimension. It's going to widen their tops, add more shape to their hip and ham or their quarter and stifle for cattle. It's going to improve handling quality for sheep and goats and calves. It's also going to put on some bloom for you. So it's going to put on some extra fat cover, not too much. It's not going to give them overly fat, but we need some sort of fat cover for these show animals to handle well on the sheep, goat, and cattle side, but just to look bulkier on the pig side as well. So that's probably my favorite supplement in our lineup is Muscle in Motion. Again, start at 45 days before show for pigs, 60 days for cattle, and make sure you're giving yourself time for that product to work and see the results that you want. Starshine. If anyone's ever fed calf manna, this is a product comparable to calf manna. It's a little bit higher protein than Muscle in Motion would be, and it's lower fat than Muscle in Motion would be. So let's say your animal is plenty fat and you don't want to use Muscle in Motion because you don't want to add bloom and cover to them. You want to just start to shape that muscle and turn their tops, as I call it, really get that groove down their top. Starshine's probably a better option for you because you're going to see leaner muscle shape, whereas with Muscle in Motion, you're going to see more fat cover with it as well. You can feed Starshine to all species, sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs, versus like calf manna, you couldn't feed to sheep. You can feed Starshine to sheep. It's even got a poultry and rabbit label, horse label, if you have any of those at home, looking for a protein supplement for them. Now, the last one I'll talk to you about is called Sculpt. This one is a 50% protein. So whereas these top two we talked about are in the 20%, 50, we're jumping all the way up to 50. That means that anything past 40, guys, anything above 40% is going to start burning fat in that animal. Okay, so that's the really, really aggressive products that don't just build muscle, they are actually burning fat on your animal. So if you have a pig with a little bit extra jowl, once they start to reach maturity, you can feed them Sculpt to try to pull that jowl out of them. If you have a calf with extra brisket or some extra crest over their neck, they've just been fed too hard and you didn't catch it earlier and switch their products, you can feed Sculpt to try to take that fat off of them. So that's a great one to be aware of. Definitely think of that one more as a fat burner rather than a muscle builder, okay? Here are some other species specific ones that I don't think we need to spend much time on. Just know that we have species specific products. Why do people want species specific products? These are both sheep and goat muscle builders. People want those because they like the fact that they're designed specifically for a sheep or goat's metabolism. All right. Some of the other multi-species products, people would argue that they're not as effective as these are because these are designed specifically for that species. So just know that there are, if you're trying to be more competitive, like I said, there are other answers out there. But like I said, I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time on those ones. We talked about really effective ones in Muscle in Motion and Starshine. So I think those cover our bases. Now we'll talk about fat and energy. Okay, so why would we want to add fat and energy to our project? In case we have one that's too skinny, we need more fat cover, or in case we need to increase average daily gain and we want more calories into that diet, that's when we would add a fat supplement. We have two multi-species options. We have a liquid fat called Stamina, comes in a 1 gallon jug and it has a nice little pump on it. So it's really easy to just pump onto your feed pan, mix it in. Or we have a powdered option. It's labeled for sheep, goats, and pigs. So cattle are not able to eat that powdered option. They would have to have the liquid option. But those are our fat sources. Fat and Fluffy is the powdered one. Pigs, sheep, and goats, they love that product. Cattle just not so much. They don't eat it. So we didn't put them on the label. But that would be your option if you need to add fat or add calories to your ration. Okay. I have milk replacer on there and it's a pig product. It's a milk replacer for pigs only. I'll be honest, I love feeding milk replacer to pigs because it's very palatable to them. They love to eat it. They love the taste of it. It's really handy when you're swapping feed and trying to increase appetite in a pig. So that's just a little trick that I share sometimes with my customers. Did we have a question? No, okay. All right. So now let's talk about fiber products. Why would we want to add fiber into a ration? That's when you need to expand rib capacity. Rib capacity and body shape are things judges talk a lot about in the show ring these days. It's very trendy. We like to see round rib shape, very cylindrical instead of flat. It looks cool. That's why judges like it. It makes the animal look better, more balanced. But it's also, if we're talking, I guess, in terms of why it matters from a production standpoint, we relate it in females to capacity. We relate it to feed conversion. Bigger bodied animals are going to be able to consume more and finish faster or reach their endpoint faster. So it is kind of a trend in the show ring, but there are some production aspects to it if you want to get that technical with it. But anyways, to enhance rib shape, get that really nice round rib shape, we're going to increase fiber in a diet. Okay, so that's what I call these fill products. Stretch is a multi-species product. It comes in a pellet. You can use it on, like I said, anything, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs. Comes in a pellet, and it's really fun to during these meetings. If I have Stretch on hand, I like to put some on a plate and wet it down, because what that product does is it expands to 3 times its size once it's wet. So the whole goal of that product is to be ingested by the animal, get wet in the digestive tract, and expand, physically expand. That's how we make that round rib shape. With that being said, it can also be utilized if you're trying to hold a pig or hold a calf, because it makes them, you're feeding them a high fiber product, so they feel full without intaking as many nutrients. So they're not gaining as much. That's another holding tool you could utilize. We have one called Right Fiber. It's a cattle only product. It really does a good job of dropping their flanks. If you have a calf who is just naturally high flanked, and with as much feed as you're pouring into them, you can't get that flank to drop, Right Fiber is a great source for that one. Then we talked about depth and dimension. Okay. That's your pig holding product, slow down average daily gain. It's a pelleted product, comes in a 50-pound bag. That's another high fiber one. Questions on fiber? Okay, we're almost done, I promise. Appetite enhancers, when you have a finicky eater or you just need to increase consumption, maybe you're behind on weight, you need to make that animal eat as much as possible. We've got a couple options for you. One is called Accent. It's a pelleted product. It's an appetite enhancer because it's very, very palatable. It smells, I don't know if I've ever found a product that smells as good as this one does. It's got a lot of flavor into it. And so it entices the animal to eat more, essentially, when you mix it into their feed. That's how it works. But it is jam-packed full of gut health products and vitamins and minerals to make sure that that animal is working as efficiently as possible from the inside out, too, to be efficient in terms of feed conversion. Okay. Next one's a lick tub. It's called Relax Licks. It's only labeled for cattle and goats, has copper in it, so no sheep. But this one is very similar to Accent, put into a lick tub form, and even better because it includes Tasco. Tasco is a very cool product or ingredient used for body regulation, body temperature regulation, excuse me. So when it's really hot outside and we're trying to get these cattle to keep consuming and keep their appetite up, Relax Licks helps with that Tasco in there to lower their body temperature and keep that at a comfortable level for them. I also like lick tubs for cattle and goats and sheep because I think it helps stimulate appetite or keep their appetite strong and aggressive. Because if they're able to lick on something throughout the day, that stimulates their metabolism, their digestive tract to continue working. It produces salivation. Salivation triggers the next step of digestion, and it keeps their system working rather than being stagnant if they weren't to have something to lick on in there. The last one, Stamina. That's that oil, that liquid fat we talked about. It's just a very palatable product. It can add a new taste and flavor to their feed, as well as a new texture. With more liquid in their feed, it creates a new texture for them, and they might like that versus just a dry pellet or just needing more flavor to their textured feed. So we talked about that one. It's very palatable. Yeah. Yeah, the question was, could you put Stamina on their dewormer to get them to eat the dewormer? And you absolutely could if you're doing an oral one. Yep. All right, last one. I promised show day supplements. So these are ones you'd use not throughout the entire feeding period, but just closer to show. Swell is a very, very popular product. It's the one I told you is very confusing to read the label and hard to know how to use it. But when you use it, it dang sure works. So what does it do? It kind of gives your animal last minute fill and bulk. We're all looking for that last minute saving grace, the thing that's going to take us from third place in class up to first place in class, right? And if you can do that just by feeding a product 3 days before show, I'm probably going to do that if it's going to move me up a couple spots in fair. It is multi-species. You can feed it to sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs. For the handling animals, so sheep, goats, and cattle, it helps hydrate muscle. It's a water retention type of product. So by retaining more water, you're freshening up that muscle tissue, expanding the muscle fibers, and it does improve the handling quality of that animal. It adds more rib shape. It will take a rib cage that's more concave like this, and it'll really bulk it out like that in a matter of days. So it's pretty cool. You can use it as a top dress, so mix it into your feed. You can drench it for sheep, goats, and cattle, or you can put it into their water bucket and let them drink it. So the best way that I've found is probably top dressing or drenching it. The water bucket, they seem to turn their nose to it too much, but top dressing, I'm able to mix it in there and kind of mask it. So that's a really cool product, really fun one. A lot of success with that one. And then the last one we have is Exhale. Exhale is actually a tube product. It's not a pellet. It's more of a liquid, comes in a tube for easy administering, but it's to help your animal enhance their stamina and endurance. We found that this product was being utilized in the racehorse industry. And what animal needs more stamina and endurance than a racehorse, right? They breathe hard, they're pushed hard, they have to perform hard. Our livestock are asked to do the same thing. In the heat of summer, they're asked to drive and continue walking and performing for sometimes up to 30 minutes. A class might take, the judge might be having a hard time deciding, and you might be driving your pig for 30 minutes. And if they don't have the stamina to last that long, they're going to break down for you. And a lot of times I judge shows myself, and I'll tell you, once that pig gives up, you're done. I mean, I can't see that pig anymore. I can't compare that pig anymore. So a lot of times that's when your spot gets called. And if you can't make it to be that final one, that last one driving, that ends your spot in a lot of ways. So you have to be the last one standing, and Exhale can help you do that. It works instantly. So you give it right before you go in the show ring. We like to use this one at home too, before we exercise our animals, just so that we can push them that much harder at home. And we're trying to mimic what we do in the show ring. So we will drive those pigs for 30 to 45 minutes at home to make sure that once we get to the show, we make it to Grand Drive, we are the last one standing. So we use that one at home as well as at the show. I'll be honest, we have actually used it a lot on sick animals too, even on like calving. We had a couple that, those calves that just get stuck in the birth canal too long, they come out real dummy, real slow, won't get up and nurse. We've given them Exhale because it's a very, very strong menthol. It's kind of like putting 1,000 cough drops in your mouth at once. And it's gotten those calves up. They nurse quicker, they get with it, and it's allowing more oxygen to work throughout their system is what it's doing. So we've used it on that. We've used it on pigs that have scar tissue on their lungs from having pneumonia when they're young. We used it on pigs while we're treating them for pneumonia. We think that it helps the medication work faster. So it's a product, to be honest, we just keep at home all the time in case we need it, in case something comes up with a cough or something. But it's a great show day product as well. Any questions on those guys? Yeah.
When I was younger, it seemed like we always had one lamb that just coughed a lot.
Yeah.
Would that work on something like that?
It's hard to know without knowing the cause if they do have scar tissue or it's a dusty environment. But yes, in both of those situations, scar tissue and dusty environments, it can definitely help. Given just once a day, once every couple days, help clear their system out so they kind of get a refresh. Almost use it like an inhaler for lambs like that. Yep, you bet. Okay, guys, I know I'm starting to see some sleepy eyes there. We fed you pizza first. I appreciate your time, your attention. I hope you learned something you can walk away with and put to your project this year and help you be more successful come fair time. But if you take anything away from this, please take away my phone number. That's my cell phone. Like I said, I'll read it out for you guys online. My cell phone number is 936-215-4478. And that is how you can send me pictures and videos of your projects, and I can make a recommendation or tell you my thoughts, and we'll get you squared away. All right, any last minute questions that we have? Okay, if you feel like you need to ask me a question one-on-one about your project specifically, feel free to text me, call me, or pull me aside right now. Otherwise, I've got some giveaways. So as you're leaving, or stop by and I'll send you something home to thank you for coming tonight. But again, let's thank the Argyles for putting this on this evening, as well as our extension agents for providing the opportunity. Let's give them a round of applause.
So grab some before you leave.
Okay, so again, we are so grateful for the time that was spent with us tonight. We feel like this was very well put together and very well received. So thank you. If you are online, please make sure that you sign in the chat with your first name, last name, and county. And if you are not from Rich County, will you please add your email if you would like the link to the presentation sent directly to you. Otherwise, you can go to the YouTube page that is USU Extension, Rich County, and it should be up there. Hopefully we can get it uploaded by tomorrow. Again, thank you, Brett and Lugene with Argyle Feeds for helping put this together. IFA, thank you for coming. We appreciate you guys, Darren and Hunter in the back. They didn't come out front and show their faces, but they helped provide a spread here for us, and we are extremely grateful for them. So thank you to everyone that joined us here in person and online, and we hope to do this again soon. Thanks, guys.